2 seconds to go. Puts it up and scores at the buzzer. All the band is out on the field. That's another knockdown.
You know, Jim. Get up.
You believe in miracles? Yes.
You are now listening to the All Things Sport Podcast with your hosts, Daimeon Banks and Pierre Banks on Speaker Radio. Fellas, you know what to do.
Welcome to the All Things Sports Podcast. I am Daimeon Banks.
And I'm Pierre Banks.
This is the maiden voyage, Pierre, of the All Things Sports Podcast. I feel real good right now, man. It's the holiday season. You know, we're full off of turkey and all those fixings, and we're going to get to that a little bit later.
A lot of good football yesterday, too.
A lot of good football, NFL action, and this is the great time of the year for sports. You got college basketball, college football going on at the same time. You got the NFL, you got hockey. Everything's going on right now, man, which allows us to get on this podcast and just rant and rave about whatever we want to rant and rave about on that particular day.
For the YouTube fans, the In My Humble fans, this show will just be an extension of In My Humble. We always give you all things sport and what is just our humble opinion. This is just another platform for us.
Now, before we get started on the meat of the show, just want to give you some background information on ourselves. Again, my name is Daimeon Banks, born and raised in Durham, North Carolina, man, right on Tobacco Road. Went on to receive my sociology degree from the Virginia State University, HBCU love all day, man. You know, and I played football in high school and college. Wasn't the best player, but I have some experience on that field, and I really feel like it gives me better insight on what an athlete, the inner thinkings of a high school, college, professional athlete. And we're going to try to give you, myself personally, I'm going to try to give you the raw and uncut thought process of an athlete.
But you know what, though? You're being modest. Because back in 96, your first season, you all were able to capture a CIAA title, if I'm not mistaken.
I did. Shout out to Big Blue, man, Virginia State University, CIAA champions, my freshman season, 1996. Now, I'm showing my age, but I don't care. I'm a married man.
Lou Anderson.
Ladies, I'm off the market, so I don't care. I'm a married man. But I'm tooting my own horn a lot right now. Let's talk about you, Mr. Banks. Not just conference champions at, your university, but national champions. Give the people a little background information on who you are and where you come from.
Again, I'm Pierre Banks, and I'm just one of those guys that considers himself blessed to be in the position that I was in, being in the position that I'm currently in. I was fortunate enough to attend Appalachian State University out of high school, and I got there at the right time. I got there when the coaches had done a heck of a job recruiting. A lot of us got there all at the same time. We were not very good when I first got there, but my class, I think, played a huge part in turning things around. My redshirt season, I think we were 6-5 or something like that, man. Couldn't buy a game on the road. And our coaches were in trouble. They were talking about getting rid of them. And it just so happened, the next year we were able to win a conference championship. That's the thing that they preached to us from day one that I got on campus. Jerry Moore, Coach Jerry Moore, or Old Mo as we affectionately refer to him as, I always said, if you win your conference championship, you make that ring as gaudy as you like. And so I remember the week after we won that conference championship, week after we sold it up, the coaches were talking about Georgia Southern coaches and how they got fired and how our coaches felt like they were going to get fired if we hadn't won the conference championship, parlayed that into a national championship the same year. And by the time I left, man, I was, again, fortunate enough to be a part of 3 national championship teams, 4 conference championship teams, 2-time All-American, 3-time All-Southern Conference selection. But again, I'm just fortunate enough to be with a lot of other very talented young men on that team. Very talented coaching staff who always put us in a position to be successful. And now just expressing my views and opinions on all things sport.
It gives us, a little bit of, knowledge, I would say, for lack of better terms, on the world of sports.
Absolutely.
Now, our focus was football, but growing up, sports was just a part of our lives. And we're going to try to give you the best experience of a podcast that we can, for all things sports. So with that being said,
the All Things Sport Hot Topic.
Our hot topic on the maiden voyage of All Things Sports podcast. Now, Pierre, you know what time of year it is. The leaves are falling. It's getting a little chilly outside. Thanksgiving is among us, family, friends. College football season, it's in its overdrive season right now, meaning the college football playoffs are here. Now, it's a fluctuating situation for the college football playoffs. The BCS era is over. It's dead. It's kaput. It's out of here. Right now, it's the Final Four. Like I said, it's a fluctuating situation. You never know any given Saturday who's going to win or lose that game. Right now, you got your top four Clemson Tigers, you got the Alabama Crimson Tide, you got the Iowa Hawkeyes, you got the Oklahoma Sooners, in no particular order. I'm not going to, I just said those names to just spew them out there. That's not the order, but those are the top four as we record this podcast.
I almost had them in the right order. Oklahoma is inexplicably ranked third in that ranking. And I think what these rankings are intended to do, they're intended to provoke conversation, to provoke argument, anger.
All of the above.
Yeah, man, because it's promoted by ESPN. They have a whole segment to bring out the rankings, to tell people who's ranked 1 through 4 and beyond. And they show all of the games, and, they're just trying to provoke some conversation, I think, because there's no excuse for some of these rankings by some of these teams. Oklahoma at number 3 is a joke. The University of North Carolina being ranked 14th is also a joke. They're 10-1, just like Oklahoma's 10-1. They had a bad loss, just like Oklahoma had a bad loss. The only difference is Oklahoma has a couple of wins that they can say are pretty good wins. You got to say the TCU win is a good win. You got to say that the win against Baylor on the road is a really good win. Very good win against a good Oklahoma State team on the road. But are those wins strong enough to overcome a loss to a very bad Texas team? And that's a bad loss for Oklahoma. But then you've got teams like that. You've got teams like Iowa, who are undefeated, Big Ten team, ranked 4th. Maybe the selection committee is thinking that things will work themselves out with Iowa still needing to play the Big Ten championship game against Michigan State, a team who just upset Ohio State, who fell from 3rd all the way to 8th in the rankings, even though it was a very close loss to a very good team who just beat a Michigan team on the road now with 3 losses, ranked 10th in the standings. The committee wants Michigan to be good so bad.
But the thing about, but to defend Jim Harbaugh has done an outstanding job at the University of Michigan in his first season back at his alma mater. Michigan is a very interesting team when you talk about the college football playoffs. They're not going to be in the top 4.
They want them to be in the top 4 bad, though.
But Pierre, one of their losses was the first game of the season to a Utah team that was ranked fairly high for the most part of the first part of the season, and they lost by a touchdown or less at Utah. Very difficult place to play. Michigan's last second loss to a rival Michigan State. But with football season this year, there's no really dominant team where someone is undefeated, been winning by 50 points every game. A lot of teams have 1 loss. Iowa is undefeated. Clemson is undefeated. Those are the only 2 undefeated teams. But from, I would say, 1 to 12, 13, they're really good teams in that top 10 to 15 range, but you have to pick 4. And right now the committee has settled on Clemson, Alabama, Iowa, and who's the other team?
Oklahoma.
Oh, and Oklahoma. See,
you know why you forgot Oklahoma? You know why you forgot Oklahoma? You forgot Oklahoma because they don't belong in the top 4. This is a team that lost to one of the worst teams in college football. On a neutral field, they lost to them by a touchdown. They lost to them. Yet they're still ranked in that top 4 by the committee.
So let's say you take Oklahoma out of the top 4. Who would you replace them with?
Michigan State. Michigan State has wins this year on the road in the big house, the team that they want to be so good.
And I think the committee's thought process on that is that will handle it, that will work itself out, because Michigan State makes it to the Big Ten championship game. They're going to play Iowa. That's a de facto elimination game for the top 4. Oklahoma is in the Big 12. They don't have a championship game. Essentially, they're in. Now, if Michigan State loses to Iowa, they have 2 losses. So it doesn't matter if they're ranked 3rd or 4th right now anyway, because if they lose the Big Ten championship game, which is quite possible, I mean, they're not going to be in the last 4 mix. So I think the committee is trying to think a little bit ahead as far as the rankings. They have Oklahoma in there now. They have it. Oklahoma has impressive wins as of late, so they slotted them at number 3. Alabama is just plugging along. Nick Saban lost that early game to Ole Miss. They've been plugging along ever since. Hasn't lost a game since.
I think we can all agree that Clemson and Alabama and and Iowa, they all belong in the top 4. These are 3 of the top teams in the country, or the top 3 teams in the country. My beef is with the Oklahoma Sooners. How did they sneak their way into this top 4 category?
They lost early to Texas, took them back a little bit, and now they've recovered because the teams that were in front of them have been losing. So you play the game in college football. If you lose early, like Alabama did to Ole Miss, you have time to recover. And Alabama has recovered. Oklahoma has recovered. The committee sees, this society is what have you done for me lately anyway. So Oklahoma lost early. Alabama lost early. They're both winning now. They're both hot. So they're in the top 4. Clemson hasn't lost at all. Iowa hasn't lost at all. So they're in the top 4. Oklahoma was ranked 13th, if I'm not mistaken, before they beat Baylor. They jumped all the way to number 3. All the way to 3. I'm not on the committee.
Those rankings
I'm not on the committee. I don't have that power. But the committee, they have a very tough decision to make every week, man, to slot those teams in the top 4. And the audacity of anyone to believe that they're going to be 100% objective is just ridiculous. They're not going to be 100% objective.
Impossible.
It's impossible to be 100% objective. Now, if 2 teams like Clemson and Iowa are undefeated, it's kind of hard to argue that because they're like undefeated. I mean, you can't get past, they don't have any losses. But a lot of teams have 1 loss. So you have to try to objectively slot the rest of those 1-loss teams. It's nearly impossible. So they have a hard job at in the college football playoff ranking system, and I commend them for trying to do a good job. People like us are going to question their decisions. They're going to debate their decisions. And there's a lot of football left to be played. You got a couple games left, and a lot can be decided in those few games. You got the SEC championship game, the Big Ten championship game, hell, even the ACC championship game. Like you said, the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill are playing great football right now. And let Clemson sleep on the Tar Heels in the ACC championship game. Clemson's going to find themselves on the outside looking in of the top 4.
But North Carolina is ranked 14th.
And if North Carolina beats Clemson decisively in their ACC championship game, I would put the Tar Heels in the top 4. You heard it here first on the All Things Sports podcast.
But how can you go from being ranked 14th to being in the top 4? That just shows how egregious these rankings are. How you put a team that's 10-1, like you said, if teams lose early, then it doesn't look that bad. They lost to South Carolina, which is an awful loss.
People make decisions that are questionable, and we are here to question their questionable decisions. And this is something that we really can't get into the show right now because we have a limited time. You have to expand these playoffs. I mean, who does a Final Four off the rip? I mean, you have to get to that Final Four. I mean, I watched you play at Appalachian State for years. The FCF system is pretty damn good if you ask me. You can't start off with 4 teams. I mean, because how do you get to those 4 teams? I mean, you have to start off with a minimum of 12, in my opinion. In my humble, start off with a minimum of 12 teams. You have those teams. You give first-round buys to the top 4, and you let everybody duke it out. Now, if you're crying and moaning about not being in the top 12, then you just need to go sit down somewhere and have a glass of water and enjoy the show.
Well, the problem with having a playoff system, period, and we talked about this a long time ago, is